You're both Canadian.
Yeah. Okay. So
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay. So I was born outside of Toronto and then raised in Alberta. My dad's from Vancouver. And then I lived in Montreal for 10 years before I moved to New York. What about you?
Gosh. Okay. I was born in Toronto at St. Mike's, but I grew up just outside of Toronto in a town called Pickering. So I don't know which direction just outside of Toronto.
Pickering. I feel like I know it because my mom was from Timmins. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. She's in good company with Shania.
Yes, she very good company with Shania. And then I was born in Cobourg, so outside of Toronto.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, so my kind of like dot around is I've been quite a migrant in my life. So, I spent most of my time growing up in Pickering. And then I moved to Toronto after college. And this actually kind of is a good little segue into sort of like how I met my husband, because it happened in those early 20s when anything could happen. So I ended up, so after college, I was working on a show in Toronto, and it was 2002, and SARS hit Toronto pretty badly, and they were shutting down all of their productions, and everybody was moving out west. And I had just sort of like graduated film school, and I was working on a show that was going on hiatus, and they didn't know if they were going to come back. So my uncle lived out in Vancouver in North Van. So I took a Greyhound, had my last $100, and I took a Greyhound across from Toronto to Vancouver. It took like 3 days.
Of course you did. I think I've done that before too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So, and I think it's only something you can do when you're that young. Honestly, I can't imagine sitting for that long now, you know what I mean? And all of the sensory input for days on end.
Yes.
But I feel like I'm more prepared for the sleep deprivation at this stage in my life.
Well, we have no choice.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I'll try and truncate the story, but on that bus journey, I met a German exchange student who dated my future husband's hostel roommate and invited me to a party on my last kind of like 5 days in Vancouver, because the show that I worked on did actually get picked up again, so I was flying home. And anyway, at that party is where I met my husband. And so he was an Australian backpacker, and he'd, like everybody, like travelers, you stay in a hostel and sort of just like, live life and have that kind of like gap year. And so anyway, through all of those sort of like random meetings, we hit it off at the party, and it was literally love at first sight. And, that's a whole other story. But yeah, so Vancouver, I also lived in briefly.
Yes. Vancouver's so beautiful.
It really is. We went back recently, and so we stayed at a hostel I also stayed at my uncle's house, but then I would go party in the hostels on the weekends, just, because he had 4 kids under 5, so I was just staying there when I had to, and then going to have a little fun. And we were at one of the hostels on Robson, so that was like a super fun part of town, and Ben was playing open mic nights at, oh gosh, I do know, because we went back relatively recently, and that bar is still on Granville Island, where we kind of got together.
I might even know it.
You probably, maybe, yeah. It was like right at the water taxi.
Yeah, I might even know it.
I should have prepared.
My sister and brother-in-law have a place on Stanley Park. Like they're there. My dad's from Vancouver, so yes.
Oh wow!
I've worked in Vancouver many, many, many times. So, but it's been a while since I've been back. But a lot of my really good friends are there.
Oh man, just such a beautiful lifestyle. We had some friends who were living in Kitsilano, and it was just beautiful.
Oh, are you kidding? So beautiful, right? It's so beautiful. Well, it's so nice to meet you, and we're so happy to have you here today. We want to hear your story. We want to talk. We have real talk. We want to talk about like being a creative, being a mom. And can you give us a little bit of a background, how you've gotten to where you are now and what you're doing right now?
Okay. So, in a longer, I've been on the planet for some time now. So in a roundabout way, you sort of go through a bunch of different iterations in your life. And so, I started out in TV production. I was a production manager. So part of our story back with my husband is we lived in Toronto and I was working in TV production there. And, his visa was running up and, we were young and not ready to get married. And his mom is, she's actually a 10-pound pom. So she took the six
Oh,
week,
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? A what?
she's a 10-pound pom. She's English, but the
Oh, okay.
Australian government in the 60s were looking for workforce in Western Australia. So they were offering boat tickets from London to Australia for £10, like the currency.
Okay.
And her parents took the opportunity and they uprooted their lives when she was 11 and emigrated took a 6-week boat kind of journey to Western Australia. And so that's how Ben's family that side of the family came to be there. And so through her lineage, he was always going to go to London as part of his like musician's journey. And I kind of intercepted a little bit there. And after living together in Toronto for 18 months, we decided to move to London just for fun. And back in the day, you could get some holiday maker visas for two years pretty easily. And so we did that. And we ended up, building a life there. We lived there for 11 years. And then so I continued my television career and most of my career in London. And that kind of like brings us up to getting pregnant with Jack, our first. And my husband had the opportunity to take a job in LA. And, we were ready, right? Like London is a wonderful city, but there's not a lot of space. And it's really hard to kind of get that space. And with a growing family, we were like, and the weather, can I just say the weather? We were ready for some sunshine. So anyway, we came here with our son after the first year. And, in the UK, you get a year maternity leave, which I was able to take before the timing aligned perfectly. So I got my first year off. But, we moved here and it was super exciting and wonderful. My husband's starting a new job. And, it didn't really feel like the right time to kind of like pursue some freelance work in a new town. I felt like, at the time we just had a lot going on with being a new parent and learning or traveling to starting a new life in a new country, et cetera, all those things. And then you start having more kids and then,
Then you start having more kids.
And then you start having more kids. And, we had to go through IVF for our second and third. So like, that takes it's a particular flavor of family building, I think. And, but through that, my lifeline was really this mom community that was already existing in Burbank. Luckily, I just sort of like checked it out on Facebook, just trying to make friends. And luckily one of the, board members was living in the apartment building next to me. So she really like took me under her wing and like was like, I'll go to this with you, or do you want to come to this with me? And, that sense of community was a true lifeline. And, we talk about motherhood and it can be really isolating at the best of times from, our existing communities, let alone like feeling like you didn't have any. So I really kind of hung on to that lifeline. And that kind of like brought me into how I sort of then took on more roles within the community. And, the opportunity came to create a new moms group, kind of like during COVID time. And that's really where I kind of stepped into it. And I became the founding president of the local chapter for MAEVE Burbank. And it's still a really amazing community. It's really going strong. And it was, such a wonderful time to, COVID was happening, which is another kind of like isolating situation. So really leaning in on how we can kind of keep the community going and stay together and, offer all the lifelines to everyone. So it was a really special time to kind of like forge that new group. And I'm just so happy to see it thriving so beautifully still. Be happy, 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 happy,
happy. Welcome back, Mama fans. Today we're joined by Kathryn Kennedy. Kathryn is a digital content strategist and video producer with a background in television production and nonprofit leadership. She began her career managing productions for major broadcasters, including BBC, ITV, Channel 4, and NBC Universal, affiliated companies, where she developed a strong foundation in storytelling, team leadership, and high-level production management under demanding deadlines. After relocating to California and stepping away from the industry to raise her 3 boys, Kathryn co-founded the MAEVE Burbank chapter and served as its founding president. Through community leadership, large-scale events, partnerships, and local campaigns, she helped create meaningful engagement and visibility for families and women in the community. That experience eventually brought her back to storytelling through the lens of digital media and content strategy. Today, Kathryn is the founder of the Kennedy Kreative Company, where she works with entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and creators to transform ideas into clear, impactful content strategies and short-form video campaigns. Her work specializes in short-form video strategy, campaign storytelling, brand voice development, batch content production, and social media execution. Combining the structure of a seasoned production manager with a strategist's eye for narrative, Kathryn helps clients turn a single content shoot into weeks of cohesive, ready-to-publish content. Cher, it was so great to have her on. You two bonded over being Canadian.
I loved speaking with her today. She's so inspiring. And that, yes, we're both Canadian, which is amazing. But what I loved most, well, of course, besides being Canadian, is how she manages her day to day with her boys. There's a lot going on in her life, but she has this like very calm way of approaching everything that I was very, very inspired by. And she's a creative. She's a mom of 3 boys. She's a total baddie. I'm so grateful that you introduced me to her, and I love this conversation. So let's dive in.
In terms of like career progression for me too, is, I've always been a bit of a creative person, but, some of the questions on the notes sort of had me thinking about that kind of like creative journey. Like, were you creative as a youth? Did your parents support your creativity? And it was a nice opportunity to reflect on that. Actually, I hadn't really thought about those things in a long time. So yeah, so in terms of the household, it was a, we're a sort of like working middle class creative house, right? So, and that was the sort of reflection that I was having, is like, yes, I did come from a creative house. Like, my dad, from where he came, there was no money for lessons or, maybe doing classes or that kind of thing. But he always had a deep appreciation for music. So there is a soundtrack to my life because my dad always had music going, and he would bring us into that. And he didn't necessarily play himself, although he did start to teach himself to play guitar. And that's how he and my husband really bonded, because Ben, as a musician, my dad was like right on, like front row at the gigs. And, Ben restrung an old guitar for him for Christmas. And I think that was a real kind of like thing, which was really lovely. But, he was always a great appreciator of the art, the musicians, anytime we're playing, he's always playing music. And then so with my brother and sister and I, he would be like, okay, who's this? What song is this? Who is it? What album? What year? Like he, would up the level. But my dad was a real, like I said, a real aficionado of his, the music of his time. So 60s, 70s kind of stuff, even 80s. My parents are just here visiting, and my dad and I had a moment for MTV because he used to videotape. So we have scores of VHSs. This is like the advent of VHS and taping. So he would tape all the music videos and then watch them back. Like that was his level of study, like he really did love it. So I'm like, Dad, we got to get those on. He's like, they probably all exist somewhere anyway, but I'm sure he's probably got some gold there, and my mom would appreciate the space back.
Sure.
So roundabout, and my mom always, interiors, our house, she was always changing something up, and she was always doing like an art project, like, doing like a little night class to learn how to paint something. So, we weren't like fine art lovers, but there was always creativity. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I do that too. Like I love interiors, and I pour my creativity into my home, and my sister is actually an interior designer. So, so interestingly, we all kind of pursued in our own way a different creative career, which is kind of, it's interesting, like you sort of still plant the seed. And, as my parents, when we moved to England, my parents would come and visit us and we would go on Europe trips and stuff. This is later on in life. And my mom would always have a museum on the travel itinerary. So she's always been an appreciator of the arts. And I think like, in a different time and a different socioeconomic kind of position in life, like, yeah, maybe she would have been more of a full-time creative, but the function, your function in your life station, you kind of have to go with it. But our kids and we had much more choices than previous generations. So I appreciate the foundation is what I appreciate. And then so my mom's dad actually, so he was started out as a car mechanic, and this is kind of how entertainment came into my life. So I promise there's a through line. It just takes me a little while to get there.
Okay.
So
Good time.
That's a through lines. Also, your interior design of your home is spectacular.
Oh, thank you so much. I am a maximalist. I love color and patterns and just velvet crushed or velvety kind of couches and leathers and stuff. Yeah, I do. I love when we bought the house, I was just like, what can I do to bring in all of the beautiful things that I've seen in my life and kind of like bring it into my own home.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, I think you have that professional touch to everything you do. I feel like you're always at the highest level in the thing that you're doing. And then so now towards production, I guess.
I feel like it's all sort of like culminated into what I'm doing now, which is kind of like the interesting, life story of a person. So, I'm like, how crazy is it that you're asking a 16-year-old to decide what they want to study and do for the rest of their life? I mean, like no pressure, right? So, my mom's dad was a car mechanic, and the story goes that he was called to fix a air conditioner or something on set of a local production of a soap opera in Toronto. And anyway, I don't even know how all the lore kind of like connects together, but basically they kept calling him back because he was good at what he did, et cetera, et cetera. And then he became friends, and there were these 7 men in different kind of they would be doing a lot of commercial production, and they were all in different parts of the of production, right? Producers, directors. My grandfather eventually became a production manager because of his practical nature, and then they were working for a company that wasn't paying them well, wasn't respecting their time, and so they came together and they decided to start a commercial production house called Partners in Toronto. And so, so then that was when my mom was maybe 16 or 17, right? So car mechanic for most of her life. And then this, so all of her brothers got into it. So all my uncles are into the business. And then my grandfather kind of like was in his time a well-respected production manager. And so when deciding what I'm going to study, I was inspired and influenced by the stories around the table of production, all of the wild and crazy things that the guys got up to. And, like of the time, my grandfather was, is of the time brain was like, I don't want my daughters in this crazy industry. His sons were allowed. So there was something in me there too, where I'm like, well, I'm going to be a production manager just like you, and I'm going to do a great job too. And, I succeeded, and I went to film school and I became a production manager. But it wasn't truly, my calling. But I learned many lessons, in terms of scheduling and practicalities and all of the things that you have to do in production, in the nuts and bolts side, more so than the creative side. But, as I was doing all of the work for the nonprofit and building that up, and I started to get a little bit more involved in sort of like a digital marketing role. And I found that kind of spoke to both sides of my brain, where I could be very organized and get stuff done because that's part of who I am. But I could also be creative and bring the color and work with branding and messaging and all those kinds of things. So when it came time for me so I have 3 sons. And so when it came time to do a bit of thinking about how I wanted to retrain, I decided to go for digital marketing. And I did an online course and started to work with I worked with a career coach, and then I worked with a few clients, and then started to, build from there. And now I've built myself a business out of what feels like thin air.
I love
But
that.
You share about how what's happening with Kennedy Kreative.
the work that I'm doing is really, it's really great. So I do work in social media. I work in content creation. My sort of like signature package, like I said, bringing in all of the skills that I've learned over my lifespan is, so I bring my production manager prowess, and I do 1 month of content filmed in one day. So it's like a mini production, right? You do a lot of planning. It's really planning heavy, so that when we get to a 4 hour, we kind of like bang it out in 4 hours. But we've been really thoughtful about what we're filming, what we need. We've got a shot list with, props and wardrobe locations, etc. But what I love about it, in terms of the marketing element, which is different from my production side, is the strategy, right? Like every piece that we create is meaningful, and it speaks towards a larger goal of what we're kind of looking to achieve with the short form content. And a lot of it is obviously to drive business. So I'm working with entrepreneurs, small businesses, a couple of nonprofits, and some of the work has been wonderful. All of it has been wonderful, actually. I've worked with a lot of women business owners, and a lot of the messaging is really meaningful to me. Like, I love that what we're creating together is kind of like part of is a good part of the internet, right? Like social media can be very many different pockets, but for instance, I've got a lawyer client who advocates for kids with special needs. So we're doing a lot of educational content supporting her business of, helping people navigate IEP meetings and trying to demystify what happens when you get a diagnosis. And that's a really hard situation for parents, speaking of community. So helping to create that community for her services, but also because, her story as a mom and how it came to be. So there's storytelling attached to what I'm doing as well, like telling the founder story. We're kind of in that era when it comes to Instagram is my kind of where most of my work is geared towards. But, the founder story is so important. When people are looking to work with someone, they want to know the story. They want to know, why am I going to choose this person over, the many, many other choices. So, that's where my services come in. We really kind of like get to the crux of what part of the story do we want to tell, what's your community, how can we like communicate your business in a simple, effective way. Maybe they've got an event coming up and we work on how to promote that event effectively. And I work with nonprofits. So I've just done a contract with CA Now, which is the California chapter of the National Organization for Women. And I did a campaign helping launch their foundation arm. And so, we did a lot of content surrounding education on period poverty. And we did some content surrounding Sexual Violence Awareness Month, which was last month. So, about the bystander effect and slut shaming. So creating engaging content to educate, Gen Z audience is their main demographic, but also, the millennial, and connecting the second wave. So we're sort of like thoughtful in how we can unify women under this one cause, right, of equality. So, I've found that, and there's lots more to talk about, but just to give you an example, a flavor of the kind of work that I've been able to find myself doing, it's been really satisfying. The storytelling is attached, the creativity is there, but I'm still using my organization skills to drive it forward and create a specialized package. Because, not a lot of people have the resources to align with an agency where you have to have like a retainer fee for 2-3 months kind of thing. So the package that I offer is sort of that middle ground, right? So you're still getting, an elevated product that has purpose and has strategy, but you only have to pay for that one kind of like month's content. So, and then if you choose, you can go on a retainer, but I feel like that's sort of like the sweet spot of where I am with my business and the people that I'm providing a service for.
That's fantastic. And I hope that our listeners are listening to you, because I'm sure there's a lot of artists out there that need content like me. Honestly, I for years resisted it because, I come from a generation of I could show my resume. It's really hard to kind of think about how can I present myself and who I am, and everything that I can offer in one Instagram page. So I think that what you do is really, really admirable. And like, we need more people like you. So
yeah, it's a gift.
I might be calling you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love working with strong women. I feel like that is my niche, like helping to organize, like that's my superpower, right? Like, let's talk about what you do. And then help organize you into, you've got your pillars of what you want to say, but everybody has an opportunity to have so much different content. It's just, I feel like I kind of can help steer that creative process so that I give it structure so that you can be creative in the ways that you are naturally creative. But I just help that structure. And that's my superpower, is to move things along and tick those boxes and just kind of, help move that needle forward. But I'm sure that's like yourself and all the mamas here, like, we've all got a wonderful story to tell that's meaningful and important. And, I'm really enjoying this chapter of my career where I'm getting to tell the stories, be creative myself, and create fun and engaging content. It's really fun. It's short form. It's wonderful to do something like a little snackable piece of creativity.
Love it. I love it though. It's so fun. And I admire that so much. Do your sons see the content that you do? How involved are they in mom's life and in mom's professional life? Are they
in my professional life? Like I do show them my stuff, like, they'll pop in, like, what are you working on? And I'll show them a little video. And then, I do the videos with them separately, which the little guys love doing it. Jack is sort of like, I've got to really present him with a good idea, something that makes him look really cool.
right?
But they're around and they see my stuff, and yeah, it's sort of like, it's not really when we do look at Instagram together on my account, and we like watching like seal content and fuzzy birds and dogs,
we watch a lot of animal videos. Yes.
Yeah, we watch. Yeah, for sure.
I'm really excited. To show my kids the video where you're with your family and you have the reunion on the beach, and levels of it, or the walking in and out of frame is really creatively done, and it just shows how good you are at envisioning how to pull an idea together, I think.
Space. Having to, I've got a whole bunch of, I've got my organization on how I kind of like store my inspiration, and I can always refer back to it. And I've always got a bit of a plan. So I knew I wanted to do that before we went to the beach, kind of thing. So, it wasn't on the fly. That's not necessarily my jam. I'm more of a prep person and then execute kind of thing. So, and it is still like herding cats. I mean, getting them to, luckily the volume was off, like just to hear the nattering of what was actually happening on the beach would have been hilarious. I should do a blooper reel. It's like, what am I doing? What's going on here? And my dad and my mom. And yeah, it was really funny, but we got it done. Yeah. And I even got my brother into it.
On that note of how you think things through, is that how you maintain balance? Because how do you have is that part of your like daily practice, is that you're organized and you think things through?
Yeah, I feel like that's like a two-pronged thing. So I'm like a chronic list maker. I don't have journals, I have my lists. So instead of keeping books of journals and thoughts, I have 10 years worth of books that are filled with like my to-do list. And that kind of like when I reflect back on them, and I looked at them, kind of recently, and it's just like, oh yeah, I was planning the wedding. And then so all of the wedding kind of like to-do lists. So it works as, my journal kind of thing, but I make lists all the time. And so that's how I keep things organized. And I do still need to write stuff down. I try and go digital, but ultimately I do like to write things down. And then that's the organization. But then I'm an extrovert. I need to release in a not so structured way. So I love to go dancing, just be free. I'm not a dancer, but I do like to, shake my groove thing. And then I love, deep chats, like something like this, late night deep chat with the nice bottle of red is kind of like so fulfilling and good for the soul.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell, and you are not alone.
We are inspired by you. Thank you for joining our Creative Mamas community. Support Creative Mamas Unplugged on Patreon to get your name in the credits, receive extra content, and earn some fun prizes. With this, we can keep creating, uplifting, and growing this incredible community together. We love you so much. Applause.